what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be talking about books that didn't need a romance. Now, in the current world of young adult literature, I would wager the majority of young adult books being published right now do include a romance. It's fantasy romance and contemporary romance and sci-fi romance and dystopian romance and historical fiction romance, and just like every YA book, almost all of them, has a romance. And that's not to say that romance is bad. I love a good swoony romance. There are so many YA books out there that have just like taken over my heart because of how well written the romance between the two main characters is. But because there are so many romantic pairings that are just oversaturating the category of young adult books, there are a ton that just aren't unique, they aren't well developed. We all know these struggles of insta-love, and there are a lot that just didn't need to happen. Dare I say these are a bad romance? So today, I just want to talk about a couple of books that I feel would have been greatly improved if the romance did not exist. It was just unnecessary, it didn't need to happen, but it did, and I feel it brought the book down in quality. So the first book I want to talk about is Not If I See You First by Eric Lindstrom, which follows a blind girl named Parker as she is joining her school's track team, dealing with the grief of her father's death, and also dealing with the reappearance of a boy from her past. When I first heard about this book, I was so excited for it. I was like, yes, give me all the books with disabled main characters where their main story arc isn't about the fact that they are disabled. I am here for it. Also, with the plotline of her dealing with the after effects of her father's death, I was really intrigued by that as well, because while there are so many YA books out there, it's almost like a staple trope to have at least one parent dead or missing or has left the family or whatever. Like, we don't usually deal with like recent deaths and what is the first few stages of grief look like. So I thought that was also really awesome. And as such, I really enjoyed this book. I particularly adored the exploration of Parker dealing with the grief of her father's death. I thought it was beautiful and raw and authentic, and I just feel like this story could really speak to so many people who have also dealt with the loss of a parent. But I was severely disappointed in the fact that the majority of this story was about Parker dealing with this boy who she used to date who really hurt her, and like coming to terms with him being in a class with her again. And I have to say, this book isn't technically like a romance. It's not about Parker and this boy meeting again and then going on dates and falling cutesy in love with each other or anything like that, but there is this like big romantic subplot about an ex who hurt her who is now back in her life, and all of the complicated feelings that come with that was a really present part of this story, and I just really did not like it. I mean, once we find out what has happened, what is this thing that happened that has hurt Parker for so many years, I'm totally on her side, and I think it was an interesting plot point, but just like all of the tension and drama that came before this resolution was just really unnecessary in my opinion, and I feel it took away from the rest of the story, which I loved so much. And like I said, the main thing that drew me to this novel was a blind girl joining the track team. Parker likes to run by herself, and she ends up sort of getting recruited by the coach of the track team because she's so talented. But I thought it was really interesting as Parker is a very independent individual person. She doesn't like people treating her differently because of her lack of sight. She's very autonomous, and so I just thought that her personality is like, once I started reading, was really interesting, and then applying that to like school sports, I thought it would have been so interesting, but it ended up becoming like the least important plot of the story. I think a lot of it does come down to those missed expectations of mine, you know, going into the book anticipating one thing and receiving another. But I honestly just felt like the two subplots that I was the most interested in were actually strong enough on its own that we didn't need this whole romantic plotline mess going on where it's like this boy, Scott, is trying to get Parker to forgive him and trying to make amends while she just wants to shut him out because he hurt her so badly and violated some things that were really valuable to her. And so it was just not great. And I think the story of having it just to be about Parker dealing with her father's death, having to move and all of the repercussions of that, along with joining a track team and having to be a part of a team when she's been so independent for so long, would have been much better. I think if those two plot lines really had the opportunity and the page time to develop, they could have been even better than they were, but they were just squashed down by this romantic plot line that wasn't all that unique or intriguing. The next book that I feel did not need a romance is Scythe by Neil Shusterman, which you may recognize me talking about on my channel, as it is one of my favorite books of the year. But I don't think the romance was all that great, and I think the story would have fared much better without it. One of my issues with Scythe is that everything about this book is flawless. The writing, the prose is beautiful, and then we have this extremely complex and thought-provoking world about mortality, what it means to die, what it means to not die, and just like all of the nuances that come with this world where scythes are in control of the population was so fascinating. And then we just have this like lukewarm romance. The thing is, I love Citra and Rowan independently. Citra has become one of my like favorite YA protagonists out there just because she's so clever and intelligent and good-willed. And then we have Rowan, who is a little bit darker, and you know, he's definitely like a Slytherin who is like willing to do what he needs to in order to accomplish his goals, but he does also have this like different view of what is honor and what is responsibility that I really love. They're both fantastic characters, and I think they do have a great chemistry in a platonic way, but just like their romance sort of came out of nowhere. Like maybe I also didn't go into this book expecting there to be a romance, so that could have influenced how I viewed the characters to start, because I wasn't, you know, setting them up in my head when I first met them. But I just feel like by the end of this story, and even throughout the sequel, Thunderhead, it just like wasn't a strong romance compared to all of the other strong characters and the strong world building and the strong conflict. Like it just did not compare. And it's also tough because this romantic storyline has been done so much in literature. We have so many stories of these two star-crossed lovers who are forced to fight to the death, but they fall in love along the way. Like I'm literally reading a book right now that has the same romantic plot line, but it was not great. And the development of their love and their relationship and all of those romantic feelings just was not there to follow up this trope that has been used over and over and over in literature and has written really amazing stories. I get really frustrated when talking about the romance in this story because the entire book is so great. If you have not read Scythe yet, oh my goodness, are you in for a treat, because it is phenomenal. But I just don't understand like what went wrong. Why is everything else in the story so well-rounded, so well-developed, the construction is perfect, but the romance just falls so flat? The romance in Scythe could have been really great, and I could have absolutely fallen in love with Rowan and Citra falling in love, and it wouldn't have been a situation like Not If I See You First, but it just wasn't developed, and it wasn't strong enough compared to all of the other elements, and I feel like it just sort of gets left behind. The thing is that like the storyline of Scythe and everything that happens in this book could happen without Rowan and Citra being romantically involved. Like they have great platonic chemistry, and so everything that has happened in this book could have happened without them having feelings for each other, but like they do, and it just wasn't great. And the final book I want to talk about in this video is one I have not mentioned since like 2015. I do not think anyone else but me has read it, but it was like the inspiration for this video. Like when I came up with this video, I was like, this is the book this video was meant for. And it is The Way Back to You. So this book, if you haven't heard of it, which I'm assuming you haven't, is all about this girl who has recently tragically passed away in an accident, and she was an organ donor, so after, obviously, she died, her organs were sent to different people in need throughout the country. So this storyline follows her best friend and her boyfriend, who are sort of estranged. They don't have a great relationship, but they go off on this trip together across the country, sneaking around from like their parents and everyone, because like this is definitely illegal, but they go to meet all of the recipients of their best friend or girlfriend's organs after she passed. That synopsis shook me before I even knew what shook meant. Like I was so compelled by this story. It sounded amazing, but it so wasn't. And the reason it was not amazing is because it is a romance between the best friend and the boyfriend, and it was just really messy. I just thought the idea of these two people who are so closely involved to the same person, who can bond over grief in a way that a lot of other people who were also friends with this girl can't relate to, coming together and meeting the people that have a piece of that person just sounds so amazing. But the whole storyline really just became about like their repressed feelings for each other and how they like didn't know how to react to certain situations when this girl was alive, and it was just like, that all sounds like very uncomfortable, and it was. I really felt no romantic chemistry between the two main characters whatsoever. Like, you know, sort of like side, like maybe it could have worked, but just through the author's execution, it just felt like very cheap and underdeveloped, and kind of like they were thrown together just because they were both put in this situation, as opposed to actually having things in common that they could really relate to outside of this person's death, and like growing into something unique and individual, and it just was not that. I'm still like really pissed. Like, I read this book 3 years ago, and I can't name many books where I'm still upset that like my expectations were not fulfilled, because the story was so different than what I wanted. Again, it's sort of like Not If I See You First, where like the book was presented as the story of these two people going to meet the recipients of their friends or girlfriends' organs, and like that is totally a subplot to the romance. Like, there are not a lot of scenes of them actually like doing things to find these people or interact with these people. It's really about their singular relationship, and I just did not like it. So that concludes my video on books that I feel did not need a romance, whether it was like Scythe, where I think this book is amazing and the romance just didn't compare to the rest of it, or sort of like The Way Back to You and Not If I See You First, where just like the romantic plotline was just not great and overshadowed all of the other things that were good about the story. In the comments below, I would love to know a book that you feel did not need a romance. Because like I said, there are so many amazing, wonderful romances out there where even if the central plot of the story is not the romance is still central to the progression of the story, and that's really important and valuable. But there are other times where it's not needed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!